Hi there, and welcome to my channel. If you would please hit the subscribe button on your way in, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you like what you see, hit the like. It's free and it helps get me out in that algorithm. Alright, let's get on to today's topic. Now my thumbnail here is made not only to represent kind of the weekend and Monday that I had, but my Monday is spilling down over into my Tuesday, and I just absolutely did not have any time to work up any kind of nail art or anything to do with today's video, but we still have a really good case to go over. It's from nearish my area, and it's a case that has been pretty famous around here. And today I'll be reading from an article from ABC News by Joseph Diaz, Scott Engel, and Haley Yamada. They did do back in May, they did an episode, it was called Love at First Click 2020 episode, and they also did it previously and covered it before this new update has come to this case in 2022. But this case you can find on a million different crime documentaries. There's tons of articles about it online. It was a very famous case around here. Not only, right after it happened, but as the details unfolded, it was just wild what was going on. And honestly, this was a very quiet, sweet area that this happened in, and it was an absolute shock to the community. So, the story has to do with a gentleman named Bruce Miller, who was found fatally shot at his Michigan salvage yard in November 1999. And it was a man named Jerry Cassidy who pulled the trigger. But the one pulling the strings on Cassidy was his online girlfriend and self-professed woman of his dreams, the woman who had convinced him to travel 800 miles to take the life of a man he thought was an abusive husband. Her name, Sheree Miller. A few months later, Cassidy would take his own life. This event would unravel the lies that Sheree Miller had created online. Miller said that her relationships with men were like a game to her. It was a video game, and each man, each relationship was another level to me, and each level was harder. It was seeing how much I could get away with and how much I could make someone believe me. And let me tell you, this woman had it down. I'm going to be reading this article, but I also have a lot of other details that I found out through researching online, and this just being a case that I followed because I remember this happening and it all unfolding on our news, on our local news, I worked in a salon. I mean, who are the therapists of the world? The free therapists are hairdressers and bartenders. So, we got to hear from a lot of the people that knew these people. Sheree Miller was convicted of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder in connection to her husband's death in 2000. In her first television interview from prison, Miller said that she was ready to explain why she did it. "If I could say it was so I could get money, it wouldn't sound as bad as it really was," said Miller. "Bruce was so close to knowing who I really was, what was really inside of me." So now we're going to go back and we're going to learn how they met and how this all started out. Miller, who was then a mother of 3 in her 20s, met Bruce Miller while working at his scrapyard in Flint, Michigan. 4 months later, on April 23rd, 1999, they eloped to Las Vegas and got married in a wedding chapel. During their marriage, she regularly talked to men on AOL chat rooms. Remember back in the day, the disc, you put it in, you loaded it up, and there was AOL, your internet. You heard that horrible noise, you waited for 20 minutes, kids don't know how lucky they are nowadays, and boom, you got into these chat rooms. Yes, I'm that old. Anyway, back to the story. "I didn't get up from in front of the computer," Sheree said. "Bruce worked at the shop and he had business, so he was gone a lot." In these chat rooms was where she met Cassidy, a former homicide detective who then worked at a casino in Reno, Nevada. I spent hours upon hours online. It's sex. I wanted to be in control of everything. Obsessively in control of that man, said Miller. At the time, Cassidy was in the midst of a divorce and was having deep financial problems, according to Detective Kevin Shanlian, who investigated the case. Miller and Cassidy's online relationship would soon turn physical, and she traveled multiple times to meet him. Cassidy began to fall for Sheree, and he reportedly told his mother that she was the woman of his dreams. However, Miller began to fabricate stories and told Cassidy that her husband was involved in the mafia and that he was abusive. She also claimed that she was pregnant with Cassidy's child and sent him pictures, including positive pregnancy tests and photos of her stomach. I just pushed my belly out. Jerry wanted to believe so bad that I believed that he'd see the pregnancy even though it wasn't there, Miller said. Later, she would tell Cassidy that her husband Bruce had found out about her pregnancy and beat her, causing her to lose the baby. I think I wrote him in a chat. I didn't tell him on the phone. He was devastated, said Miller, who said she used makeup to send Cassidy a photo of her bruised stomach. Now, I remember this, and I remember these photos, and she did a really good job. She used blush and, dark brown eyeshadow makeup to literally make it look like she had been punched in the stomach. Now, even a few months later, Miller told Cassidy that she was pregnant again, but this time with twins. Soon after the news, Cassidy received an email purportedly from Bruce saying that he forced his wife to abort the twins. That drove Cassidy to his breaking point. His babies, not only one, but two twins, also had been ended by Bruce Miller. And this absolutely enraged him, as it would any man, said Shanlian. Sheree and Cassidy hatched a plan to take the life of her husband. She said Cassidy would travel to Michigan, shoot Bruce Miller while he was at work at the salvage yard he owned. It was almost like a movie, that we were just playing a game, said Miller. But after I met Jerry at the truck stop, I knew this was going to happen. At that rest area, Sheree Miller handed Cassidy her cell phone and gave him final instructions for the murder. On November 8, 1999, Bruce Miller was shot in the neck and upper back in the office of his scrapyard. Afterwards, he called my landline and let it ring once and hung up. That was his signal to tell me he was on his way back to Kansas City, Sheree said. Now, this is something that I remember being a subject around the salon, was that originally the wrong man was accused of doing this. He was someone that worked for him and he owed him money. And if I remember, and it may say later on in the article, I thought that there was money found in Bruce's pocket, and that was part of the staging. They're supposed to put cash in his pocket to make it look like he was either being robbed or that it had to do with this money that was owed. So back to the article. It says, at the time, police believed John Hutchinson, who had worked for Bruce Miller, had recently borrowed $2,000 to be the main suspect in the case. I remember, me saying that John owed Bruce money, which he did, and they had been arguing about it, Sheree said. Police interrogated Hutchinson and also confronted him with their suspicion that he might be involved in a scheme to overcharge customers at Bruce's lot. Authorities suspected that this was a substantial enough motive for murder. Hutchinson adamantly denied killing Bruce and being involved in the scheme. So, this is a small town. I mean, Flint is big, but it's not that big. I know there's a lot of people in connections, and can you imagine if people thought that they were being overcharged, they were in some big scam? It would not have gone over well. After the murder, Sheree Miller began to give Cassidy the cold shoulder and started to date other men. Cassidy began to question their relationship and Sheree Miller's intentions. 800 miles away in Odessa, Missouri, on February 11, 2000, Cassidy took his own life. This is the thing, he was so humiliated, he felt so horrible. This was a law enforcement officer that, vowed to protect and serve, and he took someone else's life, and he realized that he'd been lied to. Under his bed, family members discovered a black briefcase that contained a letter that explained that he had finally realized that Sheree Miller had been lying to him about Bruce Miller's alleged behavior. The briefcase also contained records of airline flights, hotel rooms, emails, and chat messages between Cassidy and Sheree that seemed to implicate her in the murder of Bruce Miller. The evidence that was then turned over to the Genesee County Sheriff's Department. There was enough evidence to implicate Sheree Miller, and she was arrested. And this chick is just absolutely sick. I just can't fathom. I'll continue. I felt like I could talk my way out of anything, Sheree said. I still, in my head, felt like there was no way they're not going to believe me. Miller claimed that the emails found in Cassidy's briefcase were forged, but the circumstantial evidence mounted against her. She was charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Miller went on trial in 2000. Her defense used an expert witness to testify that it was possible to fake an email, but later the testimony crumbled under cross-examination because the expert could not explain how exactly Cassidy forged Sheree Miller's emails. I mean, this is 1999, Again, we're back at dial-up. We're at, AOL. I mean, anyway, she used manipulation to get everything from free lunch to someone to commit murder for her, said Shanlian. The jury deliberated for 2 days and delivered a guilty verdict on all charges. Miller was sentenced to life in prison. She said the weight of the situation hit her after the jury's verdict. It's over. People really know what I am, what I did, and I'm going to prison, said Miller. Now this makes me angry. Miller was granted an automatic appeal because we all have the right. We all have our rights. 9 years after her sentence, an appellate judge determined that Cassidy's suicide note should not have been used as evidence during the trial. The judge ruled that Miller would be retried. Miller was free to post bond and leave prison. I also remember this. It was much easier lying about it to myself, said Miller. It was so much easier to look at yourself when you don't have to look at yourself with the truth. Prosecutors fought for 3 years to get Miller's conviction reinstated, and the hard work paid off. When a court ruled that Cassidy's suicide note was in fact admissible in court and that Miller would not be retried, Miller was ordered back to prison. Bye-bye. Instead of filing for another appeal this time, though, Miller said she was done lying. She sent a letter to the prosecutors confessing her guilt. She said in the letter that she didn't want the Miller family and Cassidy family to suffer anymore. There's no way for me to change or undo what I did. It's forever, and I can't take it back, said Miller. I don't feel that I deserve to live life and be happy when Bruce and Jerry don't get that chance. Miller said she's chosen to publicly come forward with her story in an effort to find peace with herself. I still have a really hard time looking in the mirror, knowing what I did, said Miller. I waited to tell the truth until I could get nothing from it, but hopefully a sense of peace. And there you have it. That's the story of Sheree Miller and the end of the lives of two men that trusted her and loved her and didn't deserve it. So what do you think of this new truth-telling venture that she's on? Is it about showing some respect and giving some closure to the memory of those two men? Or is it about herself? I don't know. I guess we'll never know. On that note, everybody have a great True Crime Tuesday. So again, I'm sorry I couldn't do anything else. I will get back to doing some this week when things calm down a little bit. Until then, enjoy this beautiful weather that we're having. And have a great one. Cutsy out. P.S. Check out my shorts video. I found a little mini version of the Jeepers Creepers truck at a car show this weekend. Alright, cutsy out ×2.